Hello everyone and welcome back to Cletaversal. I am Cleta and today we are going to unpack a fundamental aspect of our constitution, Article 12 and how it shapes the enforcement of fundamental right. It's a concept at the heart of our legal system and we'll dive deep into what Article 12 covers, why it's important and how it has been interpreted over the years. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Understanding Article 12 and the state. First, let's break down Article 12 itself. Essentially, this article defines a term state for the purpose of fundamental right. It is not just talking about states like Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, it's referring to all the governing bodies under Indian jurisdiction. The state include the government and parliament of India. Second, the government and legislature of each state. Third, local authorities like municipals and the panchayats. Fourth, and other authorities that operate within the Indian territory or are under government control. Why is this important? Because fundamental rights enshrined in our constitutions are primarily enforceable against state. In other words, Article 12 determines who can be held accountable if these rights are violated. This interpretation has expanded significantly over the years as courts have tried to ensure these rights cover as many situations as possible. Scope of fundamental right and state action. Now, let's look at fundamental right. Founder of our constitution framed this right to protect individual from the excess of state powers, with some rights also enforceable against private individual. However, the general principle is that they are primarily enforceable against state action. In landmark case PD Shamdasani versus Central Bank of India Limited, the Supreme Court established that Article 19, which covers freedom like speech and expression, is meant to protect against state action, not necessarily those of private entities infringing on individual property right. So if a private person restricts your freedom of speech, it's not a fundamental right issue, but a government does, then it is. But the question remains, how do we define state in a way that covers various institutions, public and private? Now, let's go into the expanding the definition of state. This brings us to the crucial aspect of interpretation. While Article 12 gives a framework, term state can be flexible depending on the court reading of law. It has led to an expansive approach by the judiciary, including entities like public sector, corporations and statutory bodies within definition. For example, in Rajasthan Electricity Board versus Mohanlal, the court held that even statutory corporations created by the government are part of state. These corporations may operate commercially, but because they perform public functions and are governed by, they are considered within the scope of Article 12. The concept has expanded further broadened by looking into control the government exercise over such entities. In Ajay Hasia vs. Khalid Mujib Seherwadi, the Supreme Court laid down 6-point test to determine if entity is a state. These points include factors like government funding, function, control, and whether entity is performing an essential service. Let's break the 6-point test quickly. First, if the entity has extensive financial assistance from the government. Second, if the government has a deep and a pervasive control over the functioning. Third, if the entity has a monopoly status guaranteed by the government. Fourth, if the entity functions as an agent of the government. Fifth, if the crucial of entity to perform a government function. Sixth, the nature and the extent of the government's control over entity. Key case shaping the scope of state. Now let's explore a few landmark cases that have helped to shape the current understanding of state. In Sukhdev Singh vs. Bhagatram, the court ruled the statutory corporations like ONGC and LIC were also state entities. The rationale was that these corporations, though autonomous, were performing public duties and receiving public funds. This was a pivotal movement because it acknowledges the vast scope of government influence in modern life. Another important case in Pradeep Kumar Biswas vs. Indian Institution of Chemical Biology, where Supreme Court observed that even institutions like Council of Scientific and Industrial Research CSIR, which perform a unique combination of public and research functions, could be considered state entities under Article 12. The court observed that a government exercises considerable influence over CSIR and it fulfills public function vital for national progress. So, we see the pattern here. The judicial recognizes the government influence does need to be direct for an organization to be considered part of the state. If an organization indirectly impacts public welfare through government support, it can be viewed within the scope of Article 12. Horizontal application of fundamental right. Now you might be wondering, what about right violation by private entities? Here we come across concept of horizontal application. While our fundamental rights are traditionally enforceable against the state, courts have sometimes extended protection against private individuals or bodies. This horizontal application is most commonly seen in with Article 21, which safeguards the right to life and personal liberty. For instance, courts have ruled that even private entities must not infringe upon a person's right to a safe environment or a fair hearing, as a fundamental to life and liberty. An illustrative case is Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan, which concerned workplace harassment. The court ruled that employers, even the private ones, must take steps to ensure a safe working environment. This showed how the scope of fundamental right will extend to protect individuals against private actors as well. Section 6. Now, in Section 6, there is meaning the segment of 6, challenges and implications of defining the states. Now, defining the states has far-reaching implication. If an entity is labeled as state, then it becomes subject to fundamental right obligation, which could mean greater accountability. Now, when we see, however, it also places these entities under public scrutiny, potentially slowing down process due to legal compliance requirement. So now while the Board of Interpretation states extended protection, it can also introduce what challenges for government-linked entities. Now balancing the public's right to fundamental right and operational freedom of semi-autonomous body remains a complex task of our judiciary. Now, to sum it up, Article 12 and concept of state are crucial in understanding how a fundamental right are applied. The expansive interpretation by judiciary ensures that this right covers the most scenarios and protects individuals more comprehensively. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Article 12 and fundamental right landscape. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like, share and subscribe to Cletaversal. And if you have questions on topics you like me to cover, drop a comment below. I love to hear from you. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered. Thank you and take care.